Being Human with Algorithms today with Whitfield Diffie, the first part of the Diffie-Hellman key exchange that all of you use daily when you surf the web and do secure web access. Maybe some of you don't know you yet. Could you briefly describe yourself?
Well, probably not. Describe myself. I'm a very lucky sort of an academic. I was born in Washington the day before D-Day. I moved to New York when I was 3 months old, and with the exception of a year spent in Portugal when I was 4, I lived there till I was 17. I moved to Boston to go to college, and then in 1969 I moved to the West Coast, and I've lived there ever since.
Cool.
Is that what you wanted to know about me, or something else?
That's what I wanted to know, because this is what the people don't know yet. So the rest they can also read in the internet. Being Human with Algorithms, so we chose this motto because we wanted to express that the digital transformation is changing the way people are living today. And so when you think about the digital transformation, so what would you say is the most apparent thing that where it strikes to you, okay, we have such a thing that is called digital transformation?
Well, the thing that strikes me most is just how ready access we have to information. Things that would have taken a trip to the library and an afternoon's work years ago, you get in a few seconds by looking at the web. And also how much less impact on the quality of conversation that has had than I would have assumed it would have had if I had described it.
Yeah. So in the positive sense, so that it's like the conversations are still good even though you have the access.
No, on the contrary.
Okay.
I mean, it seems to me with all information, almost 90% of information or something readily available. We ought to make us smarter or something. And I don't feel any smarter.
Yeah. Okay. I see. And so you're definitely one of the shapers of this digital transformation. So how would you say today you're shaping the digital transformation? What is the effect you have for bringing it forward or backward or sideward?
Well, I think the effect that cryptography had was that it was the only security measure that could be used to persuade people that they had some degree of safety in online communications. And that I think was very important in the expansion of the web around early 90s, and the development of digital commerce.
And when security, very, very important topic. That's also always one of my favorite topics. So security is still nothing that people buy a product for in many cases. So my research domain is, for instance, Internet of Things, and then people rather take the cheaper sensor than the secure one. So do you think, how do you think people could be convinced more that they should invest in security and that secure products are needed?
Well, since I'm not the person to ask because I've failed at this for 30 years. I've been a crypto marketing man for most of my career. And not only, I was told about Internet of Things, sensors and such. A friend said something I thought was even better. She said she'd been talking to these people and she had discovered that if they have no power, all these low power things, no power, not enough power to do cryptography, but if they could find the power, they'd implement another feature.
That's right.
So I don't know what the prospects for anybody paying for security are.
Okay. And there's the thing what I'm also thinking of is like this Mirai botnet case. You probably also heard about.
No, I don't know.
So there was a bunch of so-called IoT devices like webcams and stuff, and so someone was just running through the internet looking for the standard password and then logging in and then using these resources for doing a denial of service, a distributed denial of service attack. And so this is also like a huge thing there, that you have this computational power outside and you have the standard internet protocols to access it, and at the same time no security. And
but this sounds as though it's no security due to something that might be possible, just to change just easy pieces of behavior about the way you do
and also like on top of the security that people don't normally talk about, because this was just misconfigured devices, so they just didn't roll it out properly. And another dimension of this security is also towards the direction of privacy. So because when you especially in this digital world, you have more and more online personality. So each of us has a digital persona at some point. So what is your opinion about that? So is it
Well, what got me into this, into cryptography, was feeling that I had exactly that vision 40 years ago, that we would have a world in which people would have intimate relations with people they never met in person. And the question I asked myself is, in effect, what do you do for... I thought that democracy grew out of private political conversation. We have to be able to get together and discuss what our party's position is going to be without everybody being able to spy on it. So that was the thing that I saw that cryptography was good for. And to what degree it's functioning that way is not clear to me. The real end-to-end cryptographic security turns out to be logistically fairly difficult to implement. The big failure is PGP. Not that PGP isn't popular or doesn't work at all, but running PGP required a whole lot of work to move keys around, and it had the problem that since it's basically running on rotten, from the point of view of security, platforms, you really can't trust it to store keys for long periods of time, things like that. And any system that's going to do that is going to have that problem.
Yeah. And in that direction, complexity is the complexity of computer systems increasing, and how do you think it could become manageable again?
Well, I don't. Complexity of computer systems is not the only thing. I think the critical thing is to, and it comes back to your saying people don't value security. In fact, they won't pay for it. But I think the critical thing is to devote more hardware to security. Flexibility and security are, loosely speaking, opposed to each other. The more flexible things are, so often the more difficult it is to say what security means. So I think that if gates were devoted to putting specialized security functions into computers, and that you could do better. And I know people are doing some of that, but they're not all sure they're doing it in the way I believe in. So.
And also related to security is also the term trust. And trust also has multiple dimensions. And so one dimension is like trusting in values that are provided by computers, and also trusting in information. So do you see that
trusting in the people who make the computers for you, because the interests of corporations are never the same as the interests of individuals.
No.
So the basic interest of the corporation is making money off selling a computer. That's different from your interest, which is in buying a computer that has certain characteristics.
Yeah. And what would you say is the most negative thing that you see with the digital transformation? So what would you say is a critical thing that is currently happening with people in today due to this digital transformation?
Well, I've thought for a long time that Nazism may have lost the Second World War. Well, I should say Germany may have lost the Second World War, but fascism won it. And the technologies needed to support people's control over other people had come out. And I think that that computers are a big thing in that category. And it bothers me very much that 30 years ago, truck drivers were fairly independent people. Your boss said, get this load to Mannheim by next week, and they never knew exactly how you went, and where you stopped and whether you picked up a little extra cargo and all those things. And now they're just tracked every minute with GPS. And so I think a society, what bothers me is a society in which everybody is being watched. Right? And some of it, I think there's an interesting difference between covert watching and overt watching, because covert watching is limited. If they don't want to admit they're doing it, then this point. But once now to get to the point where they can just say openly, we're watching you, we're entitled to watch you, then they can jerk you all around.
And in that direction, mass surveillance was never the easy it is today.
Right.
So would you say it changes people? So, like, also thinking about the panopticon, for instance, where the people are constantly watched while they're there. So we are somehow developing to that. I mean, not having the panopticon, but having indeed these.
No, I think we have something very much like that, because if you look at London, I don't know Germany so well, but London, you have cameras all over the place.
Yeah, in Germany it's
and,
not like
and
that.
whenever and as facial recognition software and databases that can keep track of how you move around the city and so forth, I suspect it's entirely within computational feasibility to sort of know where 90% of the people were 90% of the time.
Yeah. And so in that direction, what is interesting to me is, like, you have data collection for a longer time, like for at least 5 years or longer, and your personal data is stored in Google, for instance, in Facebook, at the NSA, and so now what's interesting to me is that now it seems, especially with this machine learning progress, that this data becomes finally accessible and analyzable.
Yes,
and
I think that's very
usable.
I think that's very likely. And whose benefit that will be to remains to be seen.
Yeah.
But it's not at all clear it will be the benefit of the individuals whose data it, in some sense, is.
Yeah. Yeah. And would you say, for someone, let's imagine we would be now both 10 years old and we would get our first smartphone, and would you say it's better to be cautious, so to stay away from the social networks and not to share too much, or would you say it's okay to share it because everybody's sharing, and so it's just a thing, if everybody's doing it, then there's not too much harm about it anymore?
No, I think that confuses two things.
Yeah.
So people who are social network users, and I'm not, share all sorts of things with their friends.
Yeah.
Right? Now, that can at times hurt them perhaps, but that isn't the thing that bothers me. The thing that bothers me is they're sharing it with Facebook, who has tremendous power not to keep secret the basic architecture of what it's keeping, what it's doing with it, etc. So I think we misuse the word privacy, or we confuse two things and call them both privacy. One is what happens in a small community. Right? And in a small community, a small town, it turned out a naval vessel. Naval vessel has a crew that rotates, rather slowly. So you're with a couple of hundred people, typically, for a year, or several months or a year assignment. And that's one kind of thing. But the other kind of thing is these entities that are watching millions of people and have tremendous power to keep secret what they're watching for, what they're doing with that information. So you could be denied a job or denied insurance because of something these people know about you that other people can buy from them behind your back. So that's the curiously. I mean, I think I feel I'm associated with secrecy because that's one of the major uses of cryptography. But I think if you're trying to point to really serious problems in the modern world, it is the degree of respect for secrecy. And because people believe in it, there are tools to make it fairly effective. Right? And if you look at the rather tiny quantity of the leaks, right? The U.S. goes ballistic over somebody leaking 1,000 or 1,000,000 documents when there are a billion of them or something, right? Their success in keeping things secret is amazing.
And so about this sharing information with someone, so there I also see the big problem that, I mean, the people are not sharing information to Facebook because they want to share information to Facebook, but because they want to share information to their friends.
That's right.
And so it appears like I'm just talking to you, but I'm using the Facebook as a medium.
That's right.
Okay. Then when we are with these algorithms, so do you think that computer scientists should have more education in ethics when they develop computer programs, so that they should take it in consideration from the design time?
Well, the trouble with ethics is it seems to me usually to be a rationalization for what somebody believes, right? And people say things like, just because you shouldn't do things just because they might be legal, but maybe they're unethical. Right? And almost nobody ever says to you, says, well, maybe it's illegal, but it's ethical, so you should do it, right? And so I think ethics is largely used as a way of jawboning people into not doing things that's within their rights to do and to their advantage to do, and trying to persuade them they shouldn't do them because they're not to the advantage of the person who's doing the persuading.
Okay, interesting. And when we come now from the negative or from the critical points to the positive side, so what would you say is the most positive effect of this digital transformation?
Well, the availability of information is the one that strikes me, but there may be others. Mobility, abstraction. No, I like lots. I like lots of things about it, and it may be. One of the things I like about the modern world, I curiously, although this one doesn't affect me terribly directly, right? The fact that over my lifetime, it has gone from being a felony for two guys to have sex to it's okay for them to get married, right? Now that may be a result of more information available to people because no matter what your interests, your practices, etc. are, you can find 500 people on the web who like the same things. You can get together with them. So I think maybe it promotes tolerance in some ways.
Yeah, and in that direction, filter bubbles, so that you have so much information that
I love that phrase, but what's it mean? A filter bubble.
Yeah, filter bubble means that you have a lot of information, and the information gets filtered. You only see filtered information, and so you're within your bubble.
Oh, I see.
So that means you only get the information that is customized to you.
Right.
So, do you see this as a problem or a necessity? Because we just have that much information.
I would say the third term. It sounds like an inevitability.
Yeah.
Right. No, it sounds to me. My immediate reaction to that is think it's a problem. Right? Think if I probably do it myself. That I don't. As all sorts of information, I look at what interests me, maybe not necessarily what's important.
But the difference is that you decide, and in the other case, in case of Facebook, for instance, when you look at your timeline, then it's only the Facebook algorithm is deciding what you see.
Okay.
And you don't see the other thing. And this is a little bit problematic because it's not like in the journal before where you had like a newspaper and then the newspaper also selected something.
I only read the sports page, I only read the business page, etc.
But you still saw the other pages, and in this case you don't even see it. Okay. This being human with algorithms, so what does the slogan tell you?
I always assumed it was a bad translation from some meaningful German phrase.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, so it is a little bit because it's the philosophical term of like being a mensch. So like you're human being a humankind individual, and this in a time where everything is getting more and more dominated by, or like not even dominated, but like controlled by algorithms.
Because I think the greatest issue of this time is the interaction. I could say the confrontation between people and machines. Right? And this is just one manifestation of that.
Okay, perfect. Anything else you want to talk about there? Everything said. Perfect.
Everything said.
So it was a great pleasure. Thank you very much.